So you went over there for healing purposes. It sounds like,
Well,
to a degree. I mean,
just because I love sitting in those thermal
oh,
springs. I did some of that in a place called Thermopolis I think in Wyoming, years and years ago. There's a little town called Thermopolis,
really?
um, and I loved that. And I've done it in. We have one place in this country where that happens, that where the hot water comes to the surface. So I've done it there, and I've done it in Germany, and it's. I think there's something very special about those places, you know.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And a friend went in December, and I thought I saw her photographs, and I thought, oh, I really want to go to this. And so I booked this little journey, not thinking too much about it. 3 days, cheap air flight, stay in a decent hotel, and are we live now?
Yeah, they're still coming in. We've got 10 people in. We still got a minute to go.
Cool. So, as always happens for me, on the flight, I get a big download about, well, there's just a big field of energy sitting
Right.
here when I start meditating on the flight. And I'm told, okay, these are the energies of new reality seeding. We want you to work with these and integrate them over the flight, because you're going to be working with these every day when you're in Budapest. We want you to practice with these energies in the water. And so that was what that was about. I hadn't any idea of that when I went. And so it was very deeply healing for me, partly because I love sitting in those thermal springs, but also these energies coming in the January. And I think a lot of people are seeing something along these lines now, new energies arriving for what we're about to begin co-creating, you know.
Mm.
And the next day, when I went to the first of these beautiful, beautiful thermal spa places that they have all over the place in Budapest, as soon as I closed my eyes to meditate, the field of light that was there on the flight had become the solar disk. You know, this big solar disk
Mm.
that
Yeah.
from Egypt. Uh, and I touched that, and I just burst into tears because it was such a deep recognition of this energy field. And I'm taking a group of people to Egypt in February.
Mm.
For the first time, I've never done this before. A friend has asked me to accompany him. He's done it a few times, taken a group, and I've never done it. And it's not the sort of thing I would do, because it seems like a big ask to take a group of people into the energy field of Egypt. So doing it with somebody who's done it before and knows the itinerary and knows the lay of the land is a good way for me to get introduced to doing that sort of thing.
When is this?
But this is happening we fly on the 12th of February, and we're there for eight
Wow.
days.
Wow.
So I know a lot of, I'm in preparation phase for that journey. And when he asked me, my first instinct was like, oh no, that's not something that I would want to do. As soon as I sat to meditate with it, it was like, yes, we want you
Yeah,
to
that's what you
do
think.
this. And a lot of my imagery and association has always been very Egyptian. You know, the team of guides that came in for me in 2010 are the lion-headed beings that we know from Egypt, and they've worked with me ever since. And so the sun disk, which I did a teleconference on Sunday. This, they tell me, is about new reality seeding, that we are now, you know, we've got this as an archetypal pattern, the sun disk. We all know this. It's not just from the Egyptian
Right.
civilization, it's many civilizations had that. And it is basically an individualized representation of the sun that comes to work with us at an individual level. But it's also seeding energies into the collective now. And from my experience, these are white gold
White
energies
gold.
that are very bright, very high frequency. They set up a clearing pattern in your body as they get introduced. And I had that over the next couple of days, a really lovely clearing process, which was useful to have it whilst I was in these hot springs. And then but they very much are here to work into the grids, to be present um, as these cosmic forces that really want to support the process we're in, I think. Or we've paved the way for this process, and now new energies are landing for an unfolding of I think, new phase that we're heading into. This year certainly feels very different.
Yeah, no doubt about that. No doubt about that.
So,
Yeah, going back to this sun disk, I remember the first one I ever saw was in 2018. It came out of a lake. I was sitting on the patio about to do a show with Judith Kuzel, which must have had some kind of connection or something. I don't know. It was the first show I ever did with her.
but she's been talking about the sun discs for years, hasn't she?
I think so, and I didn't know that. It was the first show I'd ever done with her, and something was going on. Everybody left the house, and I was broadcasting. We were in New Jersey, and I went out to the back and had a coffee, and I saw the sun disk. And I tell her about it on the show, and then I immediately start crying. For the next 2 hours, I'm crying. This lady I don't even know, right? But they've come up again. They recently came up in a session Morgan had, one of the group sessions for her.
Oh, yeah, she posted about it just the other day, wasn't it?
Did she? Yeah. And then there was another thing, and honestly, David, I can't remember if it was me or somebody told me. I think it was me. And it must have been like a lucid dream, and everybody had a sun disk over their head. And that was the gist of the dream, or if somebody told me their dream. I can't remember. I think it was me, but it doesn't matter. But yeah, there's something to be said for that. There really is.
Yeah, I think it's an individualized piece of the sun, if you like, but that's also our soul at a collective level, and it's landing in us and with us and for us, because we're about to take off, I think. We've spent years and years and years doing the very deep clearing and all of that sort of stuff, and that goes on, but now I think we enter a very different phase of our process collectively, and so there's more and more of the bullshit coming to the surface, and it's all falling apart, and we could all see that. It's so obvious and in your face, it's ridiculous. More and more people are getting the understanding that, you've just got to let that be and have its own, to unfold in its own way, because we're not here to deal with that anymore. We're here to focus on these new realities that are birthing, and I think that's great, that more people are disentangling from the world that's falling apart and paying more attention to the world that's coming into being, and that's really beautiful.
Yeah, well, it's not too surprising, because the world is falling apart, and the messages coming from the world are so mixed.
Yeah,
I just saw. I mean, obviously, you can look at mainstream media in the U.S., just so many different examples, but like this seed that was planted 3 or 4 days ago by NASA or whoever it was on mainstream media, that the inner core of the Earth has reversed its rotation. Like, come on, man. Like, I mean, there's something behind that. And obviously it's probably disclosure related, but if you look at, they're pushing Trump now in the alt news, and they're ripping Biden to pieces. So you can see all this, like anything that we know this because we've been doing this, anything we grab onto isn't there. It's not there. Yeah. It's not gonna, it's just this whole thing has become such a personal thing, especially through the end of last year. We didn't talk probably since October, maybe, or November.
No, I think it's
longer.
It's a lot longer, yeah. It's quite a while, probably 6 or 8 months or something like that. I'm not sure, but it's quite a while.
Yeah. Well, a lot happened at the end of last year. I mean, there was a lot of, talk about squeezing blood out of a turnip through the end of last year. But I do feel like we're on the other side now, and I do feel like that there's something totally different. And I know we've done many, many shows, and we've talked many, many times, and we've said, wow, something's different. But this is absolutely different. This is absolutely a new set of science rules, math rules, language rules, uh, building, constructional, architectural
Yeah.
design rules. And it's interesting that the such a de-emphasis on those things that dominated our life, and I'm talking about addictions, and I'm talking about mainstream media or government affiliation or nationalistic views or religious views, for it to come down to what we perceived because of our conditioning to be the mundane, minuscule, nominal presence of the human being.
Yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
going to
It's
England, like you going to Egypt, like that's for me. To me, that's, and I know UK's like being in the States. It's not like the other side of the world, but it's pretty. That's pretty ballsy, man. To be going to Egypt right now. I mean, I give you props for
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I have no like I say, I wouldn't have volunteered myself for that. That's not
Hmm.
my thing to be a tour leader for spiritual, spiritual tours sort of thing. That's that, and I've done a few of those. I've been to Egypt 4 or 5 times now, so it's not like it's new territory. I haven't been there for a long time, but
Right.
my friend Kai, who has done this a lot, well, not a lot, but 4 or 5 times already, said, "Oh, you know, come and do it with me," and there was when I went into meditation to ask, do I want to do this? Because my as I said, my personality was saying no, not interested in that.
Uh huh.
Uh, my higher self was like, what do you think the past 10 years preparation has been about? Of course you're meant to be going to Egypt. And it's like, oh, okay. Um, and so I see from that perspective the perfection of how things have unfolded and all the guidance that comes in, and the huge field of the huge team of beings that I know. The images we have from Egypt, all of those animal-headed beings. I'm familiar with a lot of those. Um, Anubis was a big presence in my life for a long time, and
Mm-hmm.
Horus,
Me too.
and yeah, and then Bast, the cat goddess. She came in before the lion-headed beings came in. So they've all been a strong influence in my life. Where
Right.
Well, I have no idea what's going to happen in Egypt. It's not like I've been shown anything. I just know that, okay, you to go with an open heart and an open mind and take each day as it comes, and each temple as it comes, and recognize that just as we are resurrecting aspects of ourselves. Now, this is what I was told with the sun disk, that we all have this in our deep archetypal memory because we've all worked with this energy before, and we're now resurrecting those parts of ourselves that know this. So the thousands of years in between where we've been exploring density, it's as if all of that stuff, it's almost like it's a bit of an illusion, really, and it sort of washes away as we bridge the gap now between the times before when we lived this and the time we're moving into where we'll be living it again. But we'll be living it differently because we're different people, we're different beings in a sense. There's more to us than there was, you know,
Right.
10, 12,000 years ago. So I think it's very, very exciting. Very exciting. And I'm always aware that this was something because I came back from Budapest feeling amazing, feeling deeply cleansed by my 18 hours sitting in hot springs and saunas and whatever, and into a big load of bullshit in our news, in our politics. And I immediately was taken down by it a bit and felt overwhelmed and a bit depressed. And I was thinking, well, what the fuck is this? How is this all going to work out? What are we going to do? And for the first time, and it was on one of I do Morgan's Wednesday call, um, which is for the UK and Australia. And I have the best time on these small group meetings with Morgan. She holds a superb, very open field of energy where a lot can take place. And for the first time, my higher self gave me a 10-year timeline for this. He said, everything is just fine. It's all going to be fine. In 10 years' time, you will be in a very, very different world. And I've never had a timeline given before in that
Really.
sense. So it was showed literally a 10-year timeline. There's a lot of unraveling to do, a lot of beautiful stuff to unfold. It's going to be a bit messy, but we know that. We always have known that it's going to get messier. But in 10 years' time, things will be sorting themselves out. And I thought, okay. And that felt real to me. And then I was buoyant again because I had just allowed myself to be taken down a bit by the political nonsense that goes on in this country, which I still have a bit of a tie-in to.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there's nothing wrong with that, personally. But everyone's their own. But yeah, I was trying to connect the dots there even before you said that. When I was talking about all the mixed signals, like, we just over here, they just announced on May 11th that all COVID restrictions will be lifted in the U.S. And so
I didn't know you still had. I didn't know there
was. Oh yeah. Yeah, you can't fly into this country without a COVID. Huh. I just saw another one. Okay, so that's I said that's a mixed signal because they're still so adamant. Like, why even wait? People can't come into the country unless you have one, and there's a lot of other things. And then I saw that in Australia, and I didn't even know this, and this was mainstream, and I couldn't find anything in it, but that they were on their 5th booster, and that people were not, even though the government was adamant, you need to take this 5th one, people weren't taking it. They just absolutely, even the ones that taken 4 not taking. So there's all this, all this stuff coming to the surface. And then I look at something like what you're saying and going, regardless of whether you wanted to or not, but actually aligning with it, going to Egypt with a group of people, those are the big events. And I don't mean it has to be Egypt or the pyramid. It could be Mulberry Mountain in Arkansas this summer. It could be a lot of places. But there's something about the gathering people, whether it be like in Morgan's group or whether it be in the physical, like on your trip to Egypt, that I think is probably not going to be overlooked for long because the level of code exchange and therefore expansion is quickly undeniable. And you could speak to that, like with her groups, but I mean, you can also look at gatherings where people are physically gathering, because I see a lot of people talking about that now.
Yeah. And I did a teleconference on Sunday. I do them most Sundays, and this time we worked with the Solar Disc and introduced it to 170 people showed up for that teleconference, which creates a big planetary field of energy, and that solar disc came in at an individual level for everybody. And I made it clear you don't have to receive this. If you feel it as it's coming in that it's not for you, then you just step back and say no, and that's totally fine, But I think most people were happy to receive it, and then it was received by the group field for the wider collective. So it was brought down into now. My understanding is that it's already present because it's part of our deep archetypal memory. So we're just unearthing that in the collective, or helping to unearth that in the collective fields. We're giving it a bit of a polish and bringing it to the surface, as it were, so that it's more easily activated. But then you say you had something like a dream, or of that solar disc with everybody having one, and I think that's how it works. It goes into the collective field then and becomes present at that level,
Yeah. Now I want to go back to the lion people again, because before we came on, I started getting the images, and I didn't make the connection because I've actually seen you in that form in one of Morgan's groups when I was in a group session, and you were there. I remember that very specifically, the way it started. We were the only men there. I think that was one of the things.
And now I'm the only man there. Huh? You don't show up. You don't show up for those anymore.
It's 4:00 in the morning for me. So
make a bit of effort, Todd.
Right. I tried a couple of times.
I know.
Yeah. So like, I forgot what I was saying.
The lion
people. Yeah, the lion people. Okay, so there's so much stuff that's coming in. And it's so multi-stream. It's really hard to like pinpoint anything. but every now and then something catches your attention, and the lion, Elysium, the lion people, uh, very humanoid for the last couple of weeks. Now that's not the primary one. There's other things that have come in, and other types of things that have come in, but the presence that's come in of them they haven't left. Right? They're not like right next to me, but they're like on the perimeter. Like they've come,
Yeah.
like almost like for something to happen. I don't know if you have any insight onto that, because I didn't realize you were that tied into them.
Yeah, my sense is that they're part of it. They always told me that we are geneticists and we are architects and we are designers, and we travel the universe, and when a planet is ready to kickstart the process of hosting life, we bring DNA from all over the universe and set things in motion. So that's what they told me. And they said to me, you're one of us. You're just here in a human form, but you're actually one of us. And it was like, oh, okay. That didn't really compute for me 10 or 13 years ago when they first showed up. But since then, I've had more and more experiences. And with Morgan the other day, there was just another of that's my higher self, in effect, is one of those.
Okay.
And occasionally, and just this evening, as I was walking the dog and it was dark out, and I was walking through a park and it was dark, and I was sort of in a vaguely altered state because I had just been doing energy work with a client online, and I experienced myself walking through the park in a lion body, and it was like, oh, just one of those weird little shifts that you make for a few seconds, and then you're back in regular reality. And so that I think these other dimensional aspects of us are becoming more and more present as we deeply accept that we are not just human. And there's nothing wrong with our human self, but we are much, much more than that. We've had many, many lifetimes in many different bodies, on many different star systems and planets, and in many different worlds. And, in a sense, we've become narrowly focused, most of the population thinking it's just this one life and one body, or not most perhaps, but a lot of the population. Many of us thinking we have many lives, but it's just this planet. And then there's another level of focus of, oh, it's universal. Actually, we are universal, and we hop around all over the universe having different experiences. Or we amalgamate the experiences that our soul has and start to become aware of them in this presence, in this form, in this time-space continuum. And then that allows the shifting of our fixed human reality as we become, literally, as we start to embody multidimensionality, as we accept that, and it takes a stronger presence. And I think that automatically pulls us out of the surface layer of reality that is the news and the politics and the bullshit, into these deeper fields of experience that are eternal and true and have much more validity. And that's where I have always been told, focus in those levels, because you're here to help the birth of a new world, not to dismantle the old world. And of course, the birth of the new world means that individually we have to dismantle our conditioning and our patterning, because that's what tangles us up with that surface level of reality, with the matrix, as it's called. Yeah? Yeah. And as we have done enough of the disentangling, then the other stuff rises to fill the spaces, and we become immersed in that. We become an embodiment of that and a transmitter of that, in effect, So, and I think many people are in that space now, where those eternal realities are rising in us, to create another web of life on the planet again that is different, very different than the transhumanist agenda is being spun very strongly now and pushed. I think from here on it's going to be really, really pushed. And there's a very stark choice between, are you going to go into an augmented physical reality where you are told that your body will be improved by science and by implants and you know, all the sort of things that science can do to make you stronger, fitter, whatever? Or will you trust your deep genetics that are now awakening and folding? Because all of the same sort of things, but even better, are yet to be tapped into by most of us, but they're starting to come alive.
Yeah.
So there's the organic reality that's rising, or there's the inorganic reality that's being pushed. And I think a lot of people will make that choice to go for an inorganic reality because it seems so uh, tempting, and you don't
Well,
have to work for that,
yeah, and I think too, it's something that you can touch and feel and go,
Yeah,
okay, because the human wants, let's say, five sensory evidence. But you're right, though. It is, and it's moving fast. Like
yeah.
even planting that seed about, oh, the inner core is reversing its rotation. Like, oh, really? You're putting that on the mainstream media. You know what I mean? Like so you can feel it. It's going to pop, and then the experiences people are having. Um, you know, January, mind blowing, just mind blowing. The
I
level
mean, I
of
think the solstice, wasn't it? The solstice at the end of
well,
last
yeah,
year
yeah,
was
yeah. I
was a
think
complete game changer.
yeah, I think that's for me. It was 11/22 or 22/11. Everything kind of like stopped. Like
Mm.
there was an avalanche of burning shadow and expansions. There was just so much stuff going on from the summer, and then of course the solstice. Yeah, and I remember Morgan saying she had a channel. Solstice was a day, and again that was 10 years on the Hopi calendar too. So I think people, we've forgotten that. My friend, who's pretty well versed in the Toltec culture, he said that the December 21st, 2012 was not actually the day of the new Earth. It was the beginning of the period. So if you get out of the linear for a second, the moment would be that 10-year period. So in actuality, the new world begins post solstice 2022, which falls in line with a lot of people's intel, including Morgan. If you look at it, Franco's, and so on. But like, so many things have happened. Like for me, in the last week, maybe to 10 days, the level of connection and the speed of connection is unprecedented for me. It's like snap, I'm there. Wow, how did I get out here so quick? But also at a human level, the tremendous number of life reviews, for lack of a better description, specific to like this last week was mind blowing. We had 2 sessions. We put one out last night. I think we're going to put the other one out that came before it that had to do with the balance of masculine and feminine within the body as we were experiencing it in the body, both of us, right? But prior to that, I'm having these visions of, and it was strictly a masculine kind of thing, right? Identifier or multiplier or something was going on where I actually stepped into the perpetrator, where I can't even really say, I mean, I was in their shoes or something at all levels, where emotionally, mentally, physically, psychically, all these different ways, where I was actually understanding who this person was, if that's the way you want to look at it, that was violating a child or raping a woman. Like, it was trippy. It was like, why am I doing this? What am I getting out of this? What happened to me as a child? Like this whole, it looks complex, but this whole new insight into, let's just say, the mirrors that were furthest from me. Like, I would have never thought, oh, can I have compassion for this perpetrator who violated this woman when she was a child? Yes, but I was shown something else. And it had something to do with oneness and realizing the unity in all of it, and really leveling the playing field to where there was no charge or judgment towards anything external, which to me seems like a necessity for any of us to get to that coveted 5D or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, pretty wild stuff.
It is, isn't it? And I think we have to slip out of the shackles of duality, in a
Mm.
sense, don't we? And in order to do that, in order to have duality literally unhook itself, you have to go through those sorts of experiences of being in the experience of the perpetrator, because we find the victim very easy to occupy that place, you know.
Yeah.
But most of us don't want to stick our hand up and say, well, maybe in another time I was all of those things. It happened for me some years ago when I was going through the experience of remembering my child, the pattern of childhood sexual abuse that I lived, and I was asking why has my life been so fucked up? You know, because it was really crazy and messy as a child, and I perpetuated that for a long time. And I'd asked that and went to bed and had a dream in which I was an outcast of a village on an island, and as that outcast, I would steal children and I would rape them and I would eat them. So I was a cannibal rapist, and I was being chased by the villagers and caught and beaten to death. And I woke from that dream, and it was such a vivid, visceral experience. You're quite panicked by the dream, and I lay there and had the energy of the dream just wash through me. And it was like, oh, so maybe that was me in another time, and maybe what I experienced in this time was a sort of balancing of the books, in a
Mm.
sense, you know.
Mm.
And I don't know whether that was my experience, whether I did that on this island in a hundreds of years ago, but it settled something in me. That dream allowed me to accept the possibility, and it shifts you out of victim perspective
Mm-hmm.
into you occupy a much more holistic picture of reality, and I think, and that really allows the hooks of duality, which swing us back and forth endlessly, and it allows that to come to rest, doesn't it? You know, and
Mm-hmm.
it's
Yeah.
profound.
Yeah. Well, I think it opens up code. That's the way I
Yeah,
look at it. So like, that's a wild dream, by the way. But like that's gets you to the same point, right? And another thing I pick up, like from what you were saying earlier, is the thing about coming back and getting triggered by the politics. Um, like I feel like we're hitting this. We've hit this point now where anything that's a program, we can recognize it and we can put it in its proper place. Like in other words, um, one thing that feels different, and it may be for a group of people. I don't know. Like when they talk about first waivers, or the people who obviously have been talking shadow work and doing work for many, many, many years. What you would think would be in a different arena than those that are not, or they haven't even looked at it, or whatever the case is. But still, like just talking to people since September, uh, I was amazed at their humanness and their humility. Because as the year went by, everybody was kind of carrying this knowing of we've all been through this together, right? Nobody getting worse than somebody else, and I think that's coming into the fold. And with that is a different type of path to oneness, which is we share the same conditioning, programming, bullshit, the whole 9 yards, and yet we still stand here. You
yeah,
know, and that's something very unique to us in this realm. That well, like they like has been said over the years in different narratives. The controllers, if you want to call them that, have always been afraid of us because they know who we are and what we are. And I got something last night that really made me think about things. Because when we were doing the session, right before the session, the body's consciousness speaking more loud than ever, and understanding, getting the awareness and the revelation, and basically being told that the reason for the GMOs, for the fluoride, for the 5G, for the other things that lower the frequency field, so to speak, wasn't to suppress us. It was to try to uphold the density of the frequency band here, that those controllers, or those that were in the know with this esoteric knowledge, could survive it, because they can't go where we're going. And so the gist of the information was, your bodies are changing, period. They're changing, and there's nothing that GMOs, fluoride, etc. can do, really. It'd be like putting a Band-Aid, on a gaping knife wound. You're just not going to stop the flow of what's happened to y'all. And I think the final part of it was the importance of the body's consciousness, for me anyway, way beyond what I thought. Because it was like, oh, you've got a pain here, and it was due to when you're 7 years old and your mother yelled at you. No, this is like much deeper stuff. Like the body carries everything, and showed me that all things are possible. Anything is possible. This body can do anything, and that's kind of the road we're on, which was really exciting.
It is amazing, and I think it's so true, because a lot of these things, GMOs and pollution and fluoride, all of those sorts of things, and EMFs and everything. It's like I keep asking, well, should I be worried about this? Should I be worried? And I'm told, no, don't worry about it. It's not. If you choose to believe that those things can contain you and limit you and poison you and whatever, then you're really going to have that experience, or you can create that experience. But you can also choose to trust your multidimensionality, and that as beings of eternality that exist in many, many dimensions, we can't actually be limited by stuff that goes on here. And I did have that experience very fully when I was having chemotherapy with my first cancer, and I was taken through a whole protocol of really acknowledging, I was having all of the side effects of the chemotherapy that I had been told I would have, until I sat and asked, is there something I can do about this? And then I had a huge download about just welcome this stuff in, honor it, acknowledge it, trust that it was created and developed to make you well, not to make you ill. And I did all of that, and I was told, dismantle every fear you have integrated about this stuff being poisonous. And that took me hours, but I did it, and then all of my side effects stopped. And it was like, so it really is our consciousness that governs everything. And the level of resistance in my body and in my energy field to that chemotherapy was what was creating a lot of the side effects. Now, I'm not recommending that we, eat vast amounts of GMO and pesticides and all of this sort of stuff.
Right.
The easier we, the better we treat ourselves, and the cleaner our environment and our diet, then the better things are, the easier things are. But we're in a world that is massively polluted, and there's nowhere on this planet anymore where you can get away from electromagnetic frequencies and that sort of stuff. We don't have to be limited by those. We are bigger than all of that.
True.
And our vastness is landing now. It is expanding through us, and we can't be contained. Over and over again, when I'm working with people, I see that we are networking at this extraordinary energetic level, holding and creating new planetary fields, new planetary grids that we're hardly conscious of at all, because individuals can hold the space of, I was working with somebody and she was holding the whole of Arkansas as in her field, and really? That was her, that's why she was there, and that was her piece of the grid to hold, Now, many of us hold large large pieces of the planet in our field as a balancing element. And that's not something the personality has any conception of or any know-how, or would have no idea how to do that, and would probably feel a bit overwhelmed and a bit scared. But at these huge multidimensional levels, then that's what we're capable of.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. You said a lot there. I want to show you something I saw, and people might have seen this, and I'm just curious. I've never seen anything like this, and I just saw it today, and I'm sure there's probably a story behind it. Let me get rid of this. Where are you at? Oh, somehow or another I got rid of your picture. What the hell's going on here? All right, hang on. Let's see here. Oh, I know what it is. Boom. Okay. Okay, so let's try this. That's crazy. Tell me if you've ever seen this before. What the hell did I do? I made my picture really big. Get rid of this. Okay, here it is. Check this out. What do you think of this? I'm not trying to start anything. I've just never heard of this concept, or whatever you want to call it. Here we go.
Trying to tell us is that Earth is actually made up of two planets, one 6,000 years old and the other 4.5 billion years old. And these two Earths are of different energy states. One is a very high energy state, one a low energy state. In the scriptures, they're called the spirit Earth and a temporal Earth. One day, this day, right now, the 21st century, they would come apart.
Well, what do you mean come apart? Physically?
Yes, physically, the higher vibrational Earth would become dissident with the lower vibrational Earth, and they would separate, just like the human spirit separates from the human body. Earth is about ready to either go through birth or go through death.
You're not predicting that.
Oh, I see. They're saying they can't hear us. I don't know what happened.
Oh, can you
Okay,
not?
we're back. We're back.
Okay, I've just had a
What the
message to
heck
say
was that?
somebody.
Yeah, what the heck was that? How crazy is that? How did that happen?
Yes, just
Yeah,
message
so
me to say this
if y'all
sound.
if y'all didn't hear the video sound, I don't know if it's just the video sound or so it was a video, and it's about the Earth physically separating from itself. So I asked David about it, and then he said he received information on it. What was it, 20 years ago?
25 years ago, it must have
Cool.
been, because I was with a particular teacher at the time. And Daniel is still saying, my friend Daniel is still saying there's no sound since the video. I don't know
Uh,
whether that
Well,
fixed. No,
okay, now
that
I'm
fixed.
getting the feedback. Well, it's because it's delayed. So they heard the video. They did hear the video, but when we came back home, we were muted. But we're not muted anymore.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool, good.
Yeah.
So 25 years ago, I was asking, how is this going to play out? How, because I had no idea, and I was, maybe it was more than, well, between 25 and 30 years ago. And that was exactly what I was shown. Two Earths, or one Earth revolving in space and then slowly splitting apart. One image of the planet looking bright and light, and the other dark and heavy, but they split. And there was no explanation for that, but just this splitting of the Earth into two very distinct bodies. And then I see Dolores Cannon, her stuff. She's always talked about that. She's dead now, but in her regression sessions, that was what she was receiving, was that there would be two Earth splitting. So it doesn't make sense to me, not to my conscious mind. That makes no sense at all. But somewhere deep inside, it makes perfect sense. And I don't have any idea how that would work, or when, or if, or whatever. What are the conditions necessary for that? Other than, I think, what I have always been told is that we're laying the groundwork for that, because as we flow energy and hold fields of light and create gridworks of light, that's what creates the groundwork for that to occur. And not everybody, and I know there are lots and lots of different ideas around that, but not everybody is here to evolve at this time. Not everybody is here for their personal soul ascension. That will happen to us all at some point in time, but not everybody is here for that now. So yeah.
Well, it would make sense too that, because like somebody could look at us and go, they're choosing not to go where we're going, so they're losing out. Like their perspective on descension might be what ours is on ascension. So, I mean that makes total sense to me. Why would we have a homogenous type of thing? There always has to be that other side to it, right? So, but I just thought that was interesting because of how they both have a physicality. And there's always this talk in these circles about what is ascension. Ascension is when you overcome death. And I think that there's definitely narratives out there, and I think you could build a case, because anything's possible, that we actually do that, maintaining these bodies, even though we think they're physical, they're actually not. They're actually not.
Maybe it's not about these bodies, because I'm having more experiences of myself in other bodies that aren't this body that I recognize when I look in the mirror. That's David. I have experiences now of myself in other bodies, and I always have had, even as a child. So maybe it's not about this body. I know that we exist in many different dimensions right now, and in some of those dimensions we're in very different forms than we are here. Like I experienced my higher self, or there was an integration of a lion aspect that came in and settled into this form some point 2 years ago, I think. And that was a big sort of zhuzh to my energy field. That was a big sort of addition. So I think there are other elements. We could drop this body and find ourselves in just another of the many forms that we do occupy. On a planet that is separated from this one, perhaps, and maybe on the other planet, the other aspect of Earth, it looks like we've died. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, I don't see how, and I know we're grasping at straws here because we're trying to comprehend this from our human, but again, we do know that everything in the physicality follows the energetic pattern, or the energetic occurrence then occurs in the physical. So this whole thing, and you read different people's commentary and narratives and downloads, and we've all kind of experienced this too, with the separation from our immediate family for a lot of us, where there's a clear, I remember after Christmas listening to two or three people talk about they went to their Christmas with their family, and they were like in a different world or something. Like they couldn't relate to anybody. They knew it was the end of the road. I mean, and that, you know, and of course, it's just a sign of the times. But yeah, it just points to, in one way or another, that the physicality is going to follow suit, because there's definitely, for lack of a better description, a great divide, right?
Totally. And I think that solstice, just before Christmas, was one of those big dividing points, one of those big shifting of energies. Because from my perspective, it's like, well, how could anybody not be aware that there is an enormous energetic shift going on? And that to go visit your family after that would have been like my idea of hell, to be honest. You know? And I was lucky that I don't have to do that. I get on okay with, I've got a couple of sisters left, but I get on okay with them. They don't understand me in this way. We don't talk about this stuff. They're aware that I'm involved in it, but we don't have conversations around this stuff. So to place yourself in that sort of position after a huge energetic shift like the solstice, you're sort of asking for trouble anyway, aren't you? You know, it's we have to pay more attention to our sensitivities too.
Yeah.
And it's great when you walk in the door and realize, oh, this is a whole different
Right.
set of dimensions, a whole different reality, and I can't do that anymore. I can't bridge that gap, you know. And I think that becomes more and more apparent for a lot of us now in a lot of ways. And things like what tipped me over the edge the other day, looking at politics and just the sheer in-your-face corruption. It's becoming very comical, in a sense, how
it is,
how blatant it is, you know, and how ridiculous it is, like a comedy. But I did allow myself to get hooked into it for a day or two, and then that resulted in a lovely boost to my awareness, in a sense. So
yeah,
it was good, you know.
It's like it comes the death or the deconstruction and reformation all come at one time. They come at the same time, the death and the birth. But yeah, there's just so many, and what gets me, what makes it comical to me, is that it's like gaslighting, but it's not. So you could take just any number of examples. Hunter Biden's laptop. You could take Trump's charges that he was conspiring with Russia that turned out to be nothing. You could take this guy Nancy Pelosi's husband gets attacked by a guy with a hammer in a high rent, you know, and then they're releasing videos now months later, and the cops come to the door, and both the guys are standing side by side talking to each other, you know, like. But what I'm trying to say is that the denials are COVID. The denials are being proven to have been wrong.
Yeah.
Yet the statements aren't being rescinded.
No.
You know what
and
I mean?
It's insane. There's so much information coming out about vaccines, for instance, and you know, a lot of information now coming out. Even in this country, one of the chief, was he the chief heart surgeon in the country, came out to say.
I saw that.
Yeah, and he was there on morning news saying these are causing immense damage to people's hearts, and we shouldn't be taking them any longer. And yet there's still a blanket denial, and the brainwashing program has been so effective around the whole of COVID and vaccines that people don't want to look at that. They don't want to lift the cover and look, because it means taking personal responsibility, and it means accepting maybe I've done something really damaging to myself. Maybe I've taken on board something. Now, I think regardless of whether you have or haven't been vaccinated, there are lots of things you can do to ease the toxicity out of your system. Yeah. And chief amongst those is to really get in touch with your multidimensionality. That's the most significant, because you repair yourself from the inside out with that.
Mm-hmm.
But what is amazing to me is the blanket, the weight of the collective amnesia is not the word, the collective brainwashing that
Mm-hmm.
just still holding, because people don't want. They don't want to wake up, in a sense. They don't want to have their eyes opened and see quite how things really are, you know. And who is it that says now? Is it now? Maybe it's Dolores Cannon again, who, you know, there are lots of interviews of her doing the rounds and stuff, where she's saying a lot of people, and I think it's her, but it might be somebody else, saying that a lot of people are choosing to hold on and hold on and hold on till the last possible moment for their awakening process. And I think that might be true too, that I know a lot of people here who I think are very, very close to just
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, it's almost like a soft awakening sort of thing, as things all land at once and dawn on them. So I'm very intrigued by the collective dynamics, because I work a lot in collective fields, and just seeing the weight of the suppressing energy that's like a heavy eiderdown or duvet lying over the collective field, still, that people are still wanting to stay snuggled under that and not really wake up just yet. So maybe there have to be a few sort of big shocking things to pull that blanket out of the collective. And as I say, I don't think everybody is due for that awakening in this time, but there's still this dense somnolence, in a sense, this dense sleepiness in collective fields too.
Well, you can see from a soul perspective the value of anything we do. You know, so it may look like pure hell, but it's a huge, you know, like a rubber band. You know, like you pull, and wait till the last second. I can see where that would really give us a hell of a ride as a soul. But, you know, even given all the information that's coming out, and all the things that we can do, you know, and going back to all kinds of things, decalcifying the pineal or whatever it is, right, in regard to what may or may not have happened. The biggest thing, regardless of what you might ingest or inhale or whatever, breathing exercises, whatever you do, is getting to a point where you're open to the fact that you don't know anything, that you have built a life with a house of cards like everybody else, which is fearful. But the energetic heaviness that you're talking about, and we all know this because we've all had to do it in our own lives and have to have that you know, brutally honest discussion with our soul and accept that we are responsible for everything and accept that we don't know everything. But we can always try to learn, right? I mean, yeah, I think that energetically that's a huge proposition. I remember, I got to be careful here because they pulled us off of YouTube last week and we only have one more strike. But I remember Franco, and which is weird because I'm looking at social media and they're talking about everything. And we didn't even talk about it. We just mentioned it like we've done it. But I remember him talking about it, and it was just prior to it coming out in February, March 2020. And he was talking about the goings on before the implementation in the physical plane, and that the original objective was much more radical than what we got.
Yeah.
So the reduction of physically incarnated people was a much greater target than what it has ended up being.
That was my understanding, that they were meant to be way more people were meant to be leaving,
right,
than did, you know. So yeah, that was, and that we got also what they don't, or what we don't fully appreciate, is that as quickly as viruses commutate, our immune system can mutate extraordinarily quickly, and a group of people will learn energetically
Right.
how to defend themselves against a virus or something, you know. So there is this information in our group field that is, and it happens, you know, with lightning speed. It doesn't. So we are. This is part of our multidimensionality, that our system, as soon
Right.
as it meets something, starts to learn about that something, whether it's useful, whether it's not useful, whether to take it on board, all of that sort of stuff, you know. And again, you can arm yourself, and that's perhaps not the right word, but you can invite that, your energy field, to do that, to stabilize its own immunity in that sense, you know.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was picking up last night was like what I had mentioned earlier about the consciousness of the body, and for me it was different than any communications I'd had with the body. I'd heard the body say, "Oh, eat this, don't do that, do this," or "Here's a pain, and this is what it's associated with." This is different. This is like the body, I guess. I don't know how to say it. Maybe it's that mind, body, soul thing, but like the body itself is the etheric. It just doesn't look that way. So, to your point, and this is what I've been saying for a couple of years, I don't understand how we would slow down. Everything is parallel and everything is escalating and expanding very rapidly, even more rapidly as the days go by. So if the information is being exchanged into these fractals of the universal made in the image of, so we are all of that, we contain all of that, then how is that going to extrapolate into a new human experience? I don't know, but whatever it is, to me it feels like it's coming very, very fast. It's already here and it's moving very, very, very fast. So when I make a reference to like some of the stuff we've been talking about with the COVID thing, it's, I guess what I'm saying is it's showing now that nothing's sticking. None of these, the gaslighting or the bullshit, none of it's sticking. Just like with us,
Yeah.
none of that stuff, none of our our personal stuff stuck with us. We've gotten through. We've come out on the other side, and now we're watching it happen in the collective.
And your field becomes almost like Teflon coated, and you can walk through. So it's like I chose to immerse myself in a bit of the news stream a few days ago, and it took me down because I allowed it to take me down. But as soon, you know, it washes off very, very quickly, and I think that's it. You know, we can be immersed in something, but our field restabilizes itself so quickly, and that's. I think that's really beautiful, you know.
Yeah. Well, I think that's. We were talking about this on the earlier show. When the time comes, I'm sure you've heard it. I know Morgan's mentioned it, that we'd be put to work, right? Like there'll come a time when there'll be a huge influx of need from people that you know that need it. But I feel like that the obviously this has all been preparation, but this whole thing coming out the other side in 2023 is that regardless of whatever we're seeing, we know what the main priority is. In fact, if things, and this is just my opinion, but I would think for those who are really tapped in to themselves, to the universal, to the universe within themselves, when the more extreme the external, let's say regional or global scenario, the more anchored we'll be, because as it gets more distorted, the more it will reaffirm what we already know, because we're able to see right through it. And I think at that point is where what you're saying, and it's only going to take one. It's going to take one person to go, I just levitated. Here's 1, 2, 3 step. Now I'm just using that as an example, but it would be more like in line with a healing or something. You know what I mean? Where instead of I just have the story, we've actually got the technology. That's the word, technology. This is technology. This is,
Yeah.
and that's the message I was getting yesterday was you have no fucking idea what you're capable of. So when you say something like someone's going to figure this out, you know, and boom, then it just starts to because that's how the information's moving now. It's moving very, very quickly.
And I've always been shown that this form and the energy field that we are is like is a light ship, you know, a spaceship, a light ship, whatever you want to call it. But that's what it actually is. It's a conscious vehicle for interstellar travel, in a sense, you know. And the body is a locating device in physical reality at one level, but the whole of our field is literally a light ship, a light field, and that's what we are. And I think we're awakening as we shed the dense layers of conditioning and patterning that have sat over the really vibrant strands of light that we actually are. Then as that stuff falls away, we come alive to the fact that there is well, as you say, there is nothing that this can't do. And you know, we're in the infancy of that realization at the moment, you know. And I think it's very exciting. But I was told the other week, you know, as part of this 10-year timeline to sort of mop this up, as it were, that it's already happened. It's already done. There's nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
It's already done. It's already happened. It's just a cleanup phase that we're in a sense.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's an element of that. And it doesn't take anything away from what we can accomplish or create, because it is all energy, but it's almost like the human part of us is the echo. So everything gets created and then it's materialized to whatever degree, and just like us when we get a download. What's the last part of us that gets it? The human. Oh, that's what that was. But now the time period between the download and the awareness is much shorter, and it's coming in succession, you know, successive moments throughout the day now, right?
Yeah.
Like even the session that we put out last night, there was multiple things in there. It was an activation specific to a part of the body. It was very, very fascinating. She found a great image for it. And the intel that came with it made a lot of sense because it married spirit and science and all that stuff, right? But there was a part where something happened, and I could immediately see my third eye, or whatever you want to call that, this giant solid octahedron, I guess, got activated in my lower chakras and starts spinning, right? It started spinning clockwise. And I'm going, whoa. It felt like I had a hula hoop or something, you know? And then it stopped and it flipped the other way, and I literally like took my body with it. And I thought, whoa, there's a glimpse right there to what you're saying. Like, and that's what's, and I actually had this happen about 3 or 4 nights ago, where I was letting go. I talked about it on the show, but I was removing time, which is, you know, like a practice I might do every now and then. Oh, I'm not going to allow the pressure of time or stress or deadlines. But this was a little bit deeper, and I was utilizing Morgan's geolocation and in our situation, and then I did space. And in that little experience, I went from a conscious, rested, eyes closed, you know, physically awake, meditating, connecting, to right into lucid dream with the same properties. So to me, that was a glimpse too. So I really feel like, you know, what somebody was saying and then what you were talking about is this is our transportational, this is our vehicle. We're just not looking at it that way, and it's becoming more obvious. And I think that goes along with what I was getting last night. It's not what you think it is. The body's way more than what you think it is. It's actually for all intents and purposes, spirit, flesh, soul.
It's much more sophisticated, I think, than we're tinkering around on the surface level with it, and underneath all of you, there are so many things yet to awaken with the body, and for us to tap into it. And I seriously think it's occurred to me many times. I think this thing of reptiles, or some reptiles, can regrow limbs when they lose them, a leg or a tail or whatever. And we have reptilian genetics in us. And I'm thinking, well, we should be able to do that, at some. And I was told, well, you will when you have activated these parts of yourself. It will be totally possible to do that. I think there are many capabilities, and I think we're on the threshold of that, which is why the choice now is so stark, this transhumanist agenda that is being pushed, because that will never happen there. You'll have perhaps a bionic limb attached, rather than going in and tinkering with yourself at a multidimensional level and being able to regrow a limb naturally. I think it's a very different it's a very different pathway.
Isn't it amazing how the whole process from the top down is copied? So you got the avatars making avatars making avatars.
Yeah.
And another way you could put it is you got the creation playing God on its own new creations. So there's always that pushback, that fallen angel template where, hey, I can do it better, or God's not looking, and here we are talking about what we're talking about. But back to the reptilian thing, and back to our accessibility to our skills and our attributes. I think another thing that's happening is we're starting to realize that you can't just choose to have a relationship or connection with the fluffy love and light, because the dark attributes have power, just like the light attributes of ourselves. And so, as an example, this happened last night. So in that session that we put out, it had to do with the coccyx area specifically as being the seat of the soul that was shadowed, right? That was hidden. And the activation that we didn't know was going to happen, that's where it blew it open, right? So she found this picture, right? So we're talking about this area right here.
Yeah.
And if you look through this, if you can see it, if you look through the watercolor, you can see the other side of the skeleton, right? You can see the ears out here, like it looks like elephant ears, but it goes back in here in the inside, which is that area, right?
And now, so that's the sacrum, that beautiful triangular shaped bone at the base of the spine. And from there, the coccyx, the tailbone comes out. And sacrum literally means sacred bone. So there's a clue in its name, sacred bone. And I've always felt that the sacrum is like a time-locked device that is waiting to open. Always I've experienced that when I'm working with the sacrum, that it's waiting, that it's holding a vast amount of information and just waiting to unfold.
So
it's
this
like
is
a heart.
this is the sacral here, right? This is all the sacral right here. Can you see my hand?
The sacrum.
Sacrum.
SACRAM.
Okay. Now this part
is that triangular shaped bone then.
Right. And this part down here is the tail, right?
Yeah.
So this is what I was getting last night, and I'm listening to this thing that we were guided to share, and I started thinking about what this meant, and I was receiving like, okay, this means, like my channels are fully open now. There was just a lot of stuff in it. But then I started thinking about two of my siblings. Now, two of my siblings had a surgery to remove the nub of the reptilian tail off their skeleton.
Wow.
Now, my dad was a medic in the service, and so he's pretty well versed in medical stuff. And I said, well, what the hell's going on with that? First it was this one, now it's this one. And he said, well, that's from our reptilian DNA. This is my dad, who I never had a conversation like anything we talk about. Not that he's ignorant, he's not, he's a smart guy. But my point is, I was thinking about the symbology of it. Think about our most shrouded chakra, our region. It's the root. It's where our greatest distortion is. You know, you might have to include the sacral in too, but the sexual distortion. But what's the number one thing, and what's been up? I know Morgan's talked about it. I would think you probably are onto it. That this past month was about survival. It was about bringing to the forefront or clearing survival, right? And so I thought, wow, that's trippy that my two siblings had surgery to remove that tail, and that where that tail came in is where we had our biggest block. So are we removing ourselves, disassociating ourselves from that part of our lineage, or are we accepting it? And therefore, that's why the channel is now open. I don't know.
I think we're integrating all of our genetics, whether we've labeled them, you know, good, bad, wise, dark. It doesn't matter. Our genetics have come from, you know, all over the universe, and we embody reptilian genetics as much as we embody, you know, Syrian genetics and Pleiadian genetics. You know, we're a big mix of all of that.
Yeah.
And that's the process of accepting our own darkness. And it happens in, you know, if I go through the experience of having a dream of me cannibalizing and raping young children, you know, that when I open to that and say, well, yeah, maybe that was me in another time, accepting that is it's a much deeper than accepting that in another lifetime. It's an acceptance of my darkness at a cosmic level as well. You know, the potential that I wage war in other worlds and other dimensions, all of that sort of stuff. You know, and I think we go through that in embryo. We go through the stages. You know, the egg gets fertilized and it develops, and there is a reptilian phase that the embryo goes through with its tail, and it looks like a little curled up lizard. It's all, and then we could become a fish and so on. And it you know, we embody it all. This is what we are. We are, and that's why at this, you know, we share 70% of our genes with a banana tree, for Christ's sake. You know, so we are related and mapped into all of the consciousness on this planet and much, much more beyond. And I think we're meant to be, you know, intelligently communicating with all of these life forms, and I think that's our future, that's our heritage, that's what's going to unfold for us, is this extraordinary capacity to commune with all of creation.
Yeah, the whole morphogenic field is available, Kashik's available. I mean, and that's the thing that, you know, like these people that came on, this couple that came on earlier, talking about how they approach their practitionership or sessions, and you heard people talk about this over the years, but it wasn't across the board. Where I'm taking them to the door, I'm just showing them they're doing it, right? Like that's what she said. Their comments will be, I can't believe I did this, I can't believe this happened, but I really can't believe I was speaking like an Arcturian, or whatever the case is. But that self-sourcing, I think, is really kind of the way this thing gets physically, the way it will look physically transforming and reversing through a groundswell, through the contagion of, oh, did that happen to you? That happened to me. I thought I was the only one, or whether it's a child abuse or a visitation. And then the other thing being, oh, we can do this, or let me show you something I learned. And you take them on a, whatever, and you take them to a doorway, and then they jump in, and then the rest is history. That's the part that's exciting to me, because there's the huge potential of immediate transformation, immediate manifestation, and it's like I said, I told her yesterday, I'm like, if everything if there's anything that's not possible, I'm checking out now because I'm done. No, I'm here. We're going all the way, or we're not doing nothing. Let's do it. Let's do it because it is so much of it is perspective. It really is.
It is, and I don't think we realize how limited and contained we have been. And as our eyes are opened and the limits fall away, it becomes an extraordinary reality. I mean, just what I was experiencing earlier on of walking through the park in the dark in a different form, experiencing that different form. It's like it's crazy, but it's also beautiful and very natural. And I think I think this year is going to be quite extraordinary, really. And I know that what has landed for me in terms of just guidance for January, it's sort of setting the scene for the year ahead, and these fields of light, the sun disks arriving.
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm not in any way claiming any ownership. Lots and lots of people have been talking about these for many, many years.
No, it's a very good sign, though.
Yeah, and I think they're really they hold a lot of information, or they awaken a lot of information that we have, located in our deep memory, in our deep field. And it's time now for those doorways to open up within us, and so they're really starting to, and that's
right on.
That's very beautiful.
Right on, man. Well, have a good time in Egypt.
Yeah, I look forward to sharing some stories about it with you, huh?
Yeah, you should. And if you have a break while you're there, just hit me up. Do something impromptu. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
But or when you get back, man. But I really appreciate. It was great catching up with you again, and I appreciate everything that you do for the community and for the world. Have a good time, and I hope you. I know you'll have some good guardians with you. And
Indeed.
I'll be there with
Well,
you
lots of
this
love
week.
to you, and I'll talk to you soon, huh?
All right, brother. You take care.